Hey guys, really quick, for the entire month of June at Fantasy Sabers, we're giving away the Negotiator Deluxe Edition with every Saber order. This is a 1 month only sale, so don't miss out. What if Kit Fisto trained Anakin Skywalker? Yoda and Obi-Wan stood in the side room of the Naboo Palace. Yoda stood with his back to the window, peering into the horizon, while Obi-Wan remained composed yet burdened. The death of Qui-gon Jinn hung over both of them. They argued about the fate of Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan declaring that he will train the boy, even if it means leaving the Jedi Order. But just as Yoda was about to respond, Kit Fisto entered. The Natolian Jedi Master bowed his head and looked up at the Jedi. He had heard about the discovery of the Chosen One, Anakin Skywalker, and believed it was his destiny to train him. He made his intent known, and told Obi-Wan that he had fulfilled his Jedi trials and would become a strong knight, but the training of the Chosen One was no ordinary task. It demanded more than strength, it demanded wisdom, discipline, and most of all, experience. Yoda considered this and nodded, believing this was the correct path. The council had decided to allow Anakin to be trained. However, with a wise and experienced master such as Fisto leading the boy, Yoda would be able to rest easy. Obi-Wan wanted to train Anakin himself, but with Kit Fisto training him, he's still fulfilling the promise he made his master, ensuring the boy is trained. That night, the skies of Naboo flickered with orange, and Qui-Gon's funeral began. The gathered mourners stood silent, and among them, young Anakin Skywalker watched the flames dance. He said nothing, thinking about what the future would entail now that Qui-Gon, his first master, had been destroyed. But beside him came Obi-Wan, who placed a hand on his shoulder, then pointed to a figure standing at the edge of the courtyard, Kit Fisto. Anakin looked up, and in that glance, the Force whispered to him for the first time. The following morning, Anakin was introduced to Kit Fisto, who sensed the boy's arrival before a sound was made. Anakin studied him, this new master with smooth green skin, unblinking black eyes, and the aura of power. Fisto turned to meet Anakin's gaze as curiosity overtook him. So this was the supposed Chosen One. He bowed his head and gestured his hand for Anakin to sit next to him on their ship. He tells Anakin that he's heard a lot about him and looks forward to his training, and there will be a long journey ahead of them. On their way back to Coruscant, they become acquainted with each other. Fisto hears firsthand the events that have taken place since Tatooine, and will use this to guide how he trains Anakin. Anakin's real training starts when he arrives back at the Jedi Temple. Over the next few years, Anakin spends his time between training with the other younglings and with Master Fisto directly. Kit Fisto did not rush Anakin. He studied him first, observed how he moved, reacted, and thought. They began as all Jedi do, with Form 1 Shi-Cho. Lightsabers cracked as Anakin repeated wide sweeping arcs against training remotes, his form raw but powerful. Fisto guided him patiently, reminding Anakin that Shi-Cho was not about elegance or aggression, it was about flow and control. When Anakin grew frustrated, too fast and too emotional, Fisto would smile, that knowing smile, and say balance the tide, don't crash the shore, move with the Force. As weeks became months, Fisto expanded Anakin's learning. Form 3 Sarisu followed, ideal for defense, followed by Form 4 Ataru, which Anakin's natural agility made it a favorite. Outside of the training dojo, the real training began. They meditated under the temple's subterranean pools, where sound vanished and instinct took over. There Anakin learned to stretch his awareness, not just to feel, but to listen. One of Fisto's most profound skills was the Jedi mind trick. Subtle and surgical, he taught Anakin not only to influence minds, but to understand why it worked. The mind's tendency to seek patterns, to follow confidence, and obey commands. Their first true mission together came when Anakin was 13 years old, a diplomatic mission to Lord, a desert world scarred by ancient wars, where the local nobles began hoarding off-world technology and exploiting refugees for power. The Jedi were sent to investigate peacefully. On the surface, it seemed simple. The Lordians welcomed them with smiles, but Fisto sensed deception. He had Anakin observe, but not act. For days they watched nobles, traders, and mercenaries, all carefully hiding something. One evening, in a dusty market square, Anakin sensed a child being abducted. He moved without thinking, charging in, saber drawn. The mercenaries scattered, but Fisto arrived moments later, calm and quiet, ending the standoff with a single gesture. Later in their quarters, Fisto did not scold him. He simply asked, Did you act to protect the innocent or to satisfy your anger? Anakin didn't answer. The next day, they confronted the noble in charge of the operation. Rather than drawing blades, Fisto used a Jedi mind trick to unravel the noble's lies before an audience. Anakin watched in awe. No blood spilled, no fight ignited, just the Force clear and precise. By the time they returned to Coruscant, Anakin's bond with Kit Fisto had deepened, and this was an important lesson for the young Jedi. When Anakin was 14 years old, Kit Fisto decided he had to change his training. In his mind, Fisto could sense the attachment Anakin had not only for his mother, but for Senator Padme Amidala, the one who helped save him from Tatooine. He thought by now these memories might have begun to fade, but they burned strong, and he knew he must intervene in order to progress Anakin's training. The temple that evening was quiet, and Anakin sat cross-legged, opposed his master, meditating. Fisto speaks firm, telling his apprentice he can sense his feelings are strong towards the once Queen Amidala. Anakin caught his tongue. He underestimated how attuned his master was to his thoughts. Anakin tells his master that he knows he shouldn't think of her, but he can't help himself. Fisto had hoped time and training would soften this attachment, allowing them to fade, but it remained raw and powerful. Suppressing them would be dangerous, ignoring them would be worse, and he told Anakin he would help him deal with this attachment with training. He emphasized that the Jedi Code teaches there is no emotion, there is peace, but he tells the boy this doesn't mean a Jedi doesn't feel. It means they strive to understand and rise above emotions that cloud judgment. A Jedi would be taught to reflect on what the attachment truly is. Is it love, or is it fear of loss, or is it genuine care or desire to possess? Master Fisto reiterates Yoda, explaining how attachment leads to jealousy, the shadow of greed that is. He discusses with Anakin that his feelings for Padme stem from his upbringing on Tatooine. He was surrounded by slavers, bounty hunters, scum and pigs of the galaxy. Padme was the first ounce of kindness, happiness, and beauty. What he feels for Padme isn't love, but rather the memories of those first emotions. What the young Jedi felt was real, but it was not what he believed it to be. Slowly, after many meditation sessions, Anakin began to understand the difference between attachment and compassion. He can experience these emotions, but with training, he started to be at peace with them. Next, Fisto worked to uncouple his attachment to his mother. Though Anakin had begun to understand his feelings for Padme, there remained a wound far older and deeper, the absence of his mother. It lingered beneath his progress, like an undercurrent pulling at peace in moments of stillness. Kit Fisto explained to Anakin that his attachment to his mother is different to Padme, and helps him to understand that this is rooted in fear. Fear of his mother being alone, or fear of himself being alone, and that the first step to overcome this is to let the person go. The difference here is that Kenobi thought Anakin's attachment to his mother would fade in time. However, Obi-Wan had never known slavery, nor had he been torn from his family before he could understand what safety truly meant. Kit Fisto was older, wiser, and saw the truth. This was not something Anakin could outgrow, and it would be something he would walk him through. Together they meditated on this daily. At the start of each session, Anakin would bring his mother to mind, not to suppress the memory, but to face it. The warmth of her voice, the weight of her hands, the fear of leaving her behind. At first it overwhelmed him. Grief poured through him like a fire, and he struggled to sit still. But Fisto remained grounded, a quiet anchor beside him. He helped understand that attachment, true attachment, was really about the other person. It was about fear, the fear of losing someone. The child who had once clung to Shmi for safety still lived inside Anakin, and now that child was being asked to trust the Force in her place. It wasn't easy, but over time, something began to change. Together they visualized Shmi not as a prisoner, but as a strong woman in her own right, leaving her fate up to the Force. They imagined a future where Anakin no longer needed to carry her image in every thought, but instead lived by the values she had instilled in him: compassion, courage, and hope. He began to see himself not as a boy who had been taken from his mother, but as a Jedi who could carry her light forward. Fisto listened without judgment as Anakin confessed his fears, that she was still suffering, that he should have done more, that he failed her. In response, Fisto guided him not with answers, but with clarity. Love, he taught, was not possession, it was control. Love was like the Force, expansive, selfless, and free. To honor his mother, Anakin would have to let go of the need to protect her. He had to trust that she had her own path, and that the Force would be with her too. Fisto told Anakin that in the future, when he was stronger and a master of the Force, he can save others like her. He can bring peace, so no child will have to live the way he did. She is her own being, on her own path, and he cannot walk it for her. Weeks passed, then months. The ache still remained, but it no longer ruled him. His sleep, once troubled by nightmares, became calm. He still remembers his mother, but he no longer clung to her. Fisto reminded him that no Jedi truly leaves behind those they loved. They carry them always, but with open hands. To let go was not to abandon, it was to trust, and that trust gave Anakin freedom. As fear began to leave Anakin, he grew into himself. His connection to the Force deepened. His training accelerated. He walked with greater purpose, no longer held back by the past. However, during this time, the dark side also attacked Anakin. Early on, Chancellor Palpatine called for meetings with young Skywalker. The Jedi Council had to oblige, since he was the Chancellor and had jurisdiction over the Jedi, and he started getting close to a young Anakin. He could tell the Jedi teachings were having an effect on him, far more than in the original timeline. But nonetheless, Palpatine made his move, attempting to sow the seeds of doubt, increasing the boy's fear and anger. He played the role of a trusting uncle. He was patient, cunning, and a master of exploiting even the smallest vulnerabilities. He tried to position himself as the only person who could truly understand him. Fisto is more emotionally open than Obi-Wan, but he's still a Jedi, and Jedi discourage attachment and ambition. Palpatine tells Anakin that Master Fisto is kind, but he cannot see the greatness within him as he does. He slowly feeds Anakin the idea that the Jedi are holding him back from reaching his true potential. Palpatine nurtures every frustration Anakin has, feeling like an outsider. However, as Palpatine was making progress with Anakin, something he said would change their relationship forever. Palpatine twisted their conversation, speaking about his own mother and then asking about Anakin's. He did this to open up old wounds, but he was unaware of the advances Anakin and Fisto had made in their training. Palpatine tells Anakin that the Jedi left her for nothing, but what kind of son lets his mother live in slavery? This crossed a line. This opened Anakin back up to guilt, and he left shortly after. Instead of sulking in his room as he would have in the original timeline, he went straight to Fisto and told him about what Palpatine had said. Fisto was furious. Palpatine had no right saying what he said to Anakin. The next time Palpatine called for a meeting with Anakin, Fisto attended and told Palpatine that in the future, if he wants to meet with Anakin, then he will come with him or not at all. Palpatine was frustrated with himself. He had overstepped too early. He needed to manipulate the boy further before saying something like that. He may have messed everything up. He could no longer meet with Anakin, not with Master Fisto overbearing everything they talked about. Over the following years, Palpatine attempted to see Anakin as much as possible. However, he only got short brief moments that were cut short. He could tell their relationship had been irreversibly damaged, and he may have lost his connection to the boy forever. He will have to start changing his plans. We get to the time of the Clone War. Anakin was powerful, recently promoted to the level of Jedi Knight. He was skilled in all lightsaber forms and Force abilities came easy to him. He was widely regarded as the strongest Jedi of their generation. Both Anakin and Fisto are involved in the Battle of Geonosis and take an active role in the war. The largest campaign Anakin and Fisto were involved in was on Mon Cala. Fisto, who was known for his mastery of aquatic combat, was dispatched to lead the Republic effort, but it was Skywalker, with his unmatched battlefield instinct, who would turn the tide of the campaign. Wielding his saber like lightning in the depths, Anakin led clone divers through submerged trenches and coral towers. Fisto coordinated simultaneous assaults from above and below. For his strategic leadership and composure during the siege, Kit Fisto was elevated to the Jedi High Council, bringing a much needed voice of wisdom and warmth to the often rigid Jedi chamber. Later on in the war would be their darkest battle yet. On the jungle moon of Jagoda, weeks after Mon Cala, they would duel with General Grievous. Grievous came at them with all 4 sabers, but Fisto severed one of the general's arms and Anakin the second. The killing blow was within reach, but as Anakin prepared to strike, the roof exploded, which allowed Grievous to escape, wounded but survived. Fisto placed a hand on Anakin's shoulder. He did not protest the loss of a victory. He was learning. But the war had already begun to corrode the Republic. In backroom chambers on Coruscant, politicians whispered that the Jedi were overstepping, that they had become generals, not guardians. Public opinion had changed, and it was no accident. Palpatine's plan was working. He had abandoned his long-held dream of turning Anakin. The boy was no longer accessible under the guidance of Master Fisto. Instead, he recruited Darth Maul and his brother Savage Opress for Order 66. He commanded Dooku to reach out to Jedi Knight Pong Krell after whispers of his distaste with the Jedi had reached him. He taught him the dark side and would become a warrior for the Sith cause. 3 years into the Clone War, Anakin and Fisto were at the Jedi Temple. They returned from the Outer Rim, where they had been regarded as the greatest duo of the Jedi Order. If the Republic needed a battle won, the two of them were sent. They sat together in their meditation chamber, talking about how the dark disturbance in the Force is only rising, cold and hollow. They focused on it further, until they felt a change in the Force, a spike in the darkness, screams all throughout the Force. Something had happened. The Force was dying all around the galaxy. They rushed to the council chambers, where the members at the temple, Windu, Shakti, Saisi Tin, and Plo Koon had all felt it. They started to hear screams, gunfire, and explosions go off. They rushed to the Jedi Temple foyer to see the clones have started attacking the temple. Windu takes command, telling Shakti and Plo Koon to stay here with the defense of the foyer. Fisto will defend the youngling quarters, and Anakin will go to the Padawan training quarters. They dispersed at once, but they all can't help but feel something more sinister is looming. Anakin puts his life on the line, leading the Padawans in their fight against the clones, blocking blaster fire left and right, force pushing them away, and saving many lives. However, the battle changed when Maul and his brother attacked. Maul cut down 3 Padawans before reaching Anakin. However, Maul underestimated Skywalker. The Sith tried to overpower Anakin with raw strength alone, but Anakin's talent for the Force was greater. He sliced through his blade with ease, whilst another Padawan pierced his abdomen. Maul was forced to retreat, and Anakin successfully defended the Padawan's training quarters. He decided to move. He'd go help his master defend the youngling quarters, especially if more Sith were around. However, when he got to the youngling's quarters, what he saw almost broke him. His master Kit Fisto's body lay sprung against the wall, clinging to the last essence of life. "No," Anakin whispered. Fisto's Leku trembled faintly with each breath. His lightsaber was still clutched in one hand, the blade extinguished. Anakin dropped to his knees, calling for his master. He tells him that it's going to be okay, that he'll go get help. But Fisto's eyes flutter open. He tells Anakin no, that he must listen. Anakin told him to stop, to save his energy. But Fisto shook his head. There is no strength to save, and there is no death. There is only the Force. Tears welled in Anakin's eyes. He told his master, he should have been here. He could have stopped whoever did this. But Fisto told him to stop, not to carry the blame, that will lead him to the dark side. Anakin's jaw tightened. But they killed his master. He has to stop them. But Fisto looks at him in his eyes, telling his former apprentice that he must protect the future, to not let this consume him. But Anakin shakes his head. How is he meant to let this go? Fisto tells him he already has, and he smiles. He's watched Anakin become more than a Jedi. He's become peace himself. His master isn't leaving. He's becoming one with the Force, and so shall Skywalker one day, but not in anger. He asks Anakin to promise him no revenge, no hate, to let his death become the root of his balance, be the Jedi he always knew he could be. Anakin grabs his master's lightsaber and promises Fisto as he smiled and exhaled his last breath. Fisto's hand in Anakin slackened, and the Green Jedi Master became still, his presence in the Force dimming like the last ripple of a calm sea. Anakin stood, knowing his purpose was not over yet. He connected to the Force. The dark side was like a beacon, pulsating from the central spire of the Jedi Temple, the council chamber. Anakin didn't hesitate to run. He climbed the stairs, turned the corner to the antechamber to see Mace Windu engage with Pong Krell in a duel, while Saisi Tin fought a hooded figure. But it was too late. The hooded figure pierced the chest of Master Tin, and his body slumped to the ground. The figure turned and rushed at Anakin, almost catching him off guard. Anakin stumbled back, barely deflecting the strikes. This foe was unlike any he had faced, faster, more refined, every movement calculated yet brutal. Sparks flew as they locked blades. Anakin narrowed his eyes, trying to glimpse beneath the hood. "You're strong," the figure hissed, "but your master was weak." A flicker of rage passed through Anakin, but he held it. No revenge, no hate. Fisto's voice echoed in his mind. The figure struck again, blades colliding in a shower of heat. He spoke again. "I ended him, Skywalker. You should have seen the way he fell, clutching at life, begging for time." Anakin's heart pounded, but he did not break. He turned the pain inward and anchored himself and waited. He redirected the figure's next blow, pivoted low, and thrust his palm outward. A mighty force push erupted from him, and the hood flew back as the temple's flickering lights fell upon the face of Chancellor Palpatine. Anakin froze. It all made sense now. The meetings, the manipulation, the lies, it was all him. Palpatine's face twisted into a snarl. Anakin stepped forward as their blades clashed again. Back and forth they traded, Palpatine casting lightning whilst Anakin dodged. The Sith lunged, but Anakin with his left hand ignited his master's green blade to cut Palpatine's in half. With his other lightsaber, slices Palpatine's hand off. The Sith screamed in pain as Anakin turned and grasped Palpatine by the throat, thrusting a knee into his jaw and rendering him unconscious. He stands over Palpatine triumphant as he looks over to see Windu standing tall. Pong Krell's massive form sprawled motionless at his feet. Together they regrouped. They moved quickly through the temple. Plo Koon emerged from the burning hallways, dragging sparking wrecks of metal. General Grievous destroyed. Shakti stood over the fallen bodies of Maul and Savage, defeated. And in the heart of the Jedi Temple, Count Dooku kneeled in chains, captured by Anakin and Windu. The next morning, the Senate Rotunda overflowed. The Jedi Council stood tall, and at the center was Palpatine and Dooku, bound and disgraced. Windu's voice boomed, proclaiming that the Jedi did not betray the Republic, the Sith did. Chancellor Palpatine, really known as Darth Sidious, conspired to destroy the Jedi Order with Count Dooku and other dark agents, as they presented evidence of their orchestration of the attacks on the temple, showing video footage. Murmurs became gasps, and panic turned to outrage. Mon Mothma, Bail Organa, and even Mas Amida stood in shock, and then a vote was called. Order 65 was executed. The emergency powers granted to Palpatine were revoked, and the Senate declared him an enemy of the Republic. The galaxy did not heal overnight. The Jedi Temple was in ruins. Over 90% of the Jedi were gone, Padawans orphaned, masters slain, and lightsabers extinguished forever. What remained of the Council vowed to rebuild not just the temple, but the Order itself. In the months following, Anakin was elevated to the level of Jedi Master, and with the heavy ceremony, he took his place in the council chamber, filling the seat Kit Fisto once held. He never forgot his master's final words. The war had taught him many things, but it was Fisto who taught him how to live. He meditated every morning beneath the temple's gardens, where Kit Fisto had once taken him as a boy. He trained new younglings into a deep understanding of the Force, and when they asked him about the Clone War, he spoke not of glory, but of loss and the peace that must follow it. Anakin envisioned a new era for the Jedi. Drawing from the teachings of Kit Fisto, he sought to reshape Jedi training to include deeper emotional reflection, not as weakness, but as a path to strength and self-mastery. He proposed reforms to the Council, advocating for greater diversity of thought and encouraging Jedi to form bonds. The war had shown him the dangers of disconnection. The future he believed would be forged in unity. Anakin would not lead as a soldier, but as a teacher, guiding a generation of Jedi who would protect the galaxy, not with fear or control, but wisdom, peace, and light. If you enjoyed this video, you have to watch What If Mace Windu Trained Anakin, or What If Darth Bane Trained Anakin at Birth. Don't forget to check out our June deal at Fantasy Sabers, a free Negotiator Deluxe Edition with every saber purchase, and may the Force be with you.